this character who just wanted to be left alone. She wanted to be underground. She wanted to be under the radar. Now is a world famous serial killer. And the idea of what that means for her now that her story is being taken from her, I think there's a lot more story to tell. So I implore people to watch the first season so that we're able to keep telling the story.
Just so you know, this is going to be a post-mortem, so it'll run after the series airs.
Okay.
So we can like talk about the whole season.
Great. Okay, good. I'm glad you told me that. Okay, good.
Yes. So
I'm very spoiler, I'm very spoiler attuned. Although, I mean, the podcast has been out there, the play has been out there. So it's at a point, everything's sort of fair game. But anyway.
Yes. Well, speaking of the podcast, you went from making a podcast to turning this into a TV show. What has that process been like?
The process has been, it's been quite a journey. I mean, it's been 10 years. I wrote the play 10 years ago this summer, and then developed the play in New York for 2 full years before we did the off-Broadway production in 2015. It happened in a really crazy way because after we did the play off Broadway, had come out to LA to pitch. Then I was living in New York. I was in Washington Heights still, and to pitch the television version of the play. And people thought I was out of my mind. I mean, it was really, I think, not the moment for people to receive that idea. But I had all this material that was to be the serialized version of Dolores' story. And Mimi O'Donnell, who had run the Labyrinth Theater Company and produced the play off Broadway, had moved to Gimlet. She brought the project to Gimlet, and we made the podcast. So the irony of all of this is that then when the podcast came out, suddenly there were all these people interested in doing the TV version of Dolores' story, which I had tried to do in 2016. So it's been a very windy, bizarre, surreal, fantastic process that really could not have happened any other way, I think.
Well, since you have obviously so many different kind of stories, versions in this world, did you want them all to mirror each other in a different way? Or did you want to make each one kind of unpredictable for those who maybe haven't seen the other formats?
That is top of mind for me really every day throughout this process, and was in a different way throughout the podcast process. It was really important that this television iteration was both true to the essential DNA of the piece. I mean, I think for those who saw the play, for those who heard the podcast, even for those who haven't, it is the same character. It's the same project. And yet I didn't want to make for television simply a visualization of what we had done for audio. I absolutely want to surprise people who think they know what they're in for. So, it's a slightly different menu of victims, if you will. We have some new characters for the television version. There's some twists and turns. We want to keep people on their toes.
Well, I spoke to Kita at the junket, who is so lovely. She was so lovely to speak to. And she mentioned that she was actually involved in the podcast. How did that work out with the casting? Did you just want to bring her over to the show?
She's the only cast member from the podcast who came with us to television, and the podcast cast is unbelievably great. I mean, really, I pinch myself every day. The cast of the podcast and the cast for television are both just insanely extraordinary. We knew that the television version was going to be a totally different cast. Daphne, who I'd written the play and the podcast for, who's involved as a writer and a producer on the television version, wanted to focus on writing and producing. So we had brought Justina in. We were so extraordinarily lucky to get Justina to play Dolores for TV. She's so unbelievable. And we knew we wanted to surround her with a brand new cast. And the truth is, Kita auditioned. She said, I don't care. I'm sending in a tape. And we said, you know what? She's so fantastic. And she had been so uniquely involved with me in finding that character for the podcast that it felt, I think, really right to everybody on the team that if we were to bring one cast member from the podcast, it would be her. And it was absolutely right that she's the connective tissue between the two.
Well, I also loved that you had Dolores narrate her story for the TV show. I believe you even mentioned the podcast, and you have the play in there as well, correct? Yeah. Was there a reason why you wanted to have her narrate it? Or what was the reason behind that creative choice?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really unusual show in that she's in every scene. That really is so unusual on television. We talked a lot about the whole show really being about your identification with this character, that she's a serial killer who's not othered. she's somebody who certain audiences may at first think, oh, I have nothing in common with her. I don't have her lived experience. I would never do what she's doing. But the endeavor of the show is to walk you step by step by step through how you, dear viewer, are also Dolores, as am I. We're all the same, and backed into a corner under the same circumstances, we would do the same thing. So it was really crucial, first and foremost, that the viewer is aligned with Dolores emotionally and psychologically. And I think one of the most effective ways to do that is to have her, via voiceover, really hold our hand and walk us through this and know that we can trust her. Whatever we feel about what she's doing on screen, we know that we're her confidant.
Well, to kind of get into the season and all the events that happened, because there were a lot.
a lot. Yes.
Twisted
It's an eventful season.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, what I would love to just kind of know a little bit about what your intention was behind the relationship with Dolores and Luis, because I found it to be extremely interesting. It seemed like she did genuinely care about him. At other times, it seemed like maybe she just wanted to get away from him. So I would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you for that question. I mean, their relationship is so it's quite a relationship. Yeah, I mean, I think at times she wonders if she does genuinely have romantic feelings for him, and I think at times she does. I think absolutely there's a love there for this guy. I think, frankly, not to get too sort of heady about it, I think Dolores is replicating a dynamic that she had with Dominic and then with Tabitha. And here she is with this guy who says, I don't care how many people you kill, I will love you and I'll make it all okay. And that's irresistible to her. The world has turned on her. The people that she loved most dearly, the people that she trusted most implicitly, have abandoned her. And here is this guy saying, I truly don't care what you have done. I don't care what I have to do to prove that. I'll do it. And I think in a way that's Dolores' Achilles heel. And they're so symbiotic and perfect for each other in so many ways. And it cannot last. I mean, they're so destructive, And my God, the chemistry between Justina and Alejandro is unreal. I mean, you can't, that's that kind of chemistry, I think, as a producer, as a creator, you just pray that two actors have that kind of chemistry. They completely locked into the nuance of that and the kind of love, hate, repulsion, attraction, codependence.
Oh my goodness. Their chemistry was amazing. I found myself like, oh, they're so bad for each other, but they're so good together. I was going back and forth the entire season.
Good. That's the game. We very much hope that you're like, wait, am I rooting for these people?
I know. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where I was with it. And I love that you also got a little bit into Luis's background as well. And the trauma that he had experienced. Is that really what you kind of set up to play into why he was so willing to kind of do all these things for Dolores because of the past and the trauma he experienced?
Hurt people, right? And that's the as I said, the sort of endeavor of the whole show is that from the perspective of Dolores. She's doing these things we have feelings about, but let's walk through how a human being who is like you or me or anybody comes to that. And I think in Dolores's eyes, for a lot of the season, Luis is this like funny, kooky guy who's cleaning up her mess. And it takes until pretty late in the season for that reveal that you're talking about to come out. And for her, I think, to fully see him, honestly, and to go, oh my God, this is a kindred spirit. This is someone who has been so deeply hurt, who has not processed what's happened to him, who is trying to exorcise something in the way that, I mean, in a different way that she is, but there is a deeper connection between the two of them than I think she even sees, and I think then the viewer sees. And certainly what we learn has happened to him is something that we don't like to talk about in this culture. This is a sexual abuse of young men is something that is I've certainly very, very rarely seen that depicted in media. And it was important that that we have a scene where we show that she too has never really addressed that subject in her life. She hasn't really encountered that, and isn't quite sure how to comfort him, but chooses to lead with love. You know, she consoles him. She absolutely is there for him as a partner in that moment.
Personally, kind of speaking on other relationships,
Yeah.
just from what I gathered, it kind of seemed to me like the most genuine for Dolores was actually kind of her relationship with Nellie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think she really kind of had a bad thought about Nellie the entire show. She genuinely wanted
That's
to
right.
help her.
Yeah.
So what did you really
Right.
want to touch on with that dynamic there?
Nellie is a kind of lifeline. I mean, Nellie is, I think, the person in the orbit of the shop who is most clear on who she is and what she's doing there. Everybody else has secrets. Nellie is like, here's who I am. I'm here. I see you. I'm present. And that's a splash of cold water in Dolores's face. That's at first kind of a shock, but is a really necessary, again, lifeline. Nellie is a support. So, you know, not to be too explicit about spoilers, when what happens to Nellie at the end, that really is, that's crossing a line for Dolores. Like that's too far, that Nellie has been dragged into the mess.
Well, when this kind of all like comes to an end and ties together, seems like there might be potential for a season 2. Is that something that you purposely left open, or were you kind of hoping to just kind of close this with one season?
Oh, there's much more story to tell for oh yeah, no, we like to say Dolores Roach is unkillable. She will pop up anywhere, she'll make it work, she'll figure it out. There's a lot more of her story to tell. And because we open and close the season in the present day, the meat, if you'll pardon the pun, of the series is in 2019 pre-COVID. We've set up this idea that 4 years into the future, this character who just wanted to be left alone, she wanted to be underground, she wanted to be under the radar, now is a world famous serial killer. And the idea of what that means for her now that her story is being taken from her, I think there's a lot more story to tell. So I implore people to watch the first season so that we're able to keep telling the story.